All right, welcome back, everyone. Ready for another deep dive.
Absolutely. Always ready to dive in.
Today, we're looking at something I think pretty unique. We're going behind the scenes of a court case
Oh, wow.
where a man is suing his own ego.
His own ego, huh?
Yeah, I know, right?
That's a new one.
So we're going to be using this transcript of Ego, a play by Pasquale M Palmieri.
Okay.
And it all takes place in this fictional town, Puckersburg.
Puckersburg. Interesting name.
Yeah, I thought so too. It definitely sets the stage for something a little out there.
Yeah, it makes you wonder if the name itself has a deeper meaning.
Right, like maybe a play on words or...
Could be.
So in this deep dive, we'll be walking through the arguments made in the case, looking at the witness testimonies,
Okay.
and seeing what the jury ultimately decides.
Sounds intriguing.
Yeah, so the big question is the ego really the villain here? Or is it more complicated than that? So let's jump into Act 1 and meet the players in this unusual drama. First, we have Mr. Justin Case, a successful stockbroker.
Successful, huh?
Yeah, but he claims his life is in ruins, and he's blaming his ego.
Blaming his ego. So he's basically saying that this
part of himself.
this part of himself is responsible for all his problems.
Exactly. He wants a restraining order against it.
Wow. That's quite the legal strategy.
I know, right?
It makes you think, though, can we really separate ourselves from our egos?
Yeah, that's a good question.
Like, is that even possible?
That's what we're here to explore.
All right, let's do it.
So, get this. The ego is actually defending itself in court.
Wait, what?
Yeah.
So, like, the ego has its own lawyer.
It has its own lawyer, yeah.
That's wild. How does that even work?
Well, it's a play, so I guess anything goes, right?
True. But it does make you think about how the ego operates.
Yeah.
Like, can it even speak for itself?
Right. Or is it always just acting through us?
Fascinating.
It is, isn't it?
So who's the judge in this case?
Oh, he's a character, all right. Justice Willingham Butterworth.
Willingham Butterworth.
Yeah.
That's a mouthful.
I know, right? And he's described as being very old, a bit hard of hearing,
Oh, dear.
and apparently has a thing for walnuts.
A thing for walnuts, huh?
Yeah, always munching on them.
Okay, that's kind of funny.
It is, but I think it's interesting, too.
How so?
Well, maybe the playwright is using him to show that even judges aren't perfect.
Like a commentary on human fallibility.
Exactly.
Even in the justice system. I like it.
So let's move on to the witnesses.
Okay, who do we have?
First up is Jack Tumbler.
Jack Tumbler.
Yeah, he's Justin's acquired brother.
Acquired brother, what does that even mean?
So they've been best friends since childhood
Okay.
and basically consider each other family.
Got it.
And Jack's testimony is interesting.
What does he say?
Well, he talks about how Justin has always been driven by status symbols.
Status symbols? Like...
Fancy cars, the latest gadgets, you know.
Oh, I see. So like material possessions.
Yeah, and Jack kind of implies that this obsession might come from Justin's father.
His father?
Apparently he had some pretty old-fashioned views about women.
No, that's never good.
No, not really. So we start to see how Justin's past might be influencing his behavior.
Okay, so we've got this background information about Justin now.
Right. But then things take a really unexpected turn.
What happens?
Jack breaks down in the stand.
Wow, that changes things.
It does, doesn't it?
It adds a whole new layer to their relationship.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And it makes you wonder, how much did this experience shape Justin?
Right. And how does it affect their friendship now?
So many questions.
Definitely keeps things interesting.
Now, for a complete contrast to Jack, we have witness number 2, Miss Erica DeBuche.
Erica DeBuche.
Yeah, she's Justin's current lover. And let's just say, she's quite a character. Very glamorous, confident.
Sounds like a handful.
Oh, definitely. And she doesn't hold back in her testimony.
What does she say?
Well, she argues that Justin's ego had nothing to do with the breakdown of his marriage.
Interesting take.
Right. Instead, she says it's all about physical attraction.
Physical attraction.
And attention in relationships.
So she's basically saying that...
So sometimes it's not about morality, it's just about basic human needs.
That's a pretty bold statement.
It is, isn't it?
It makes you think about whether we're really in control of our desires.
Right. Like, are we driving the bus or are we just passengers?
Exactly.
And she's not shy about sharing her views on women and men and desire.
Oh, I bet that makes for some interesting courtroom drama.
Oh, you have no idea. Some of her statements are really out there.
Intriguing. It seems like the playwright is using her character to challenge some conventional ideas.
Definitely. So we have Justin trying to divorce his ego,
Yeah.
Jack, with this complex history, and Erica, who throws a whole new perspective into the mix.
And let's not forget our walnut-loving judge.
Oh, yeah, Justice Butterworth, adding a touch of absurdity to it all.
I'm hooked. What happens next?
Well, that's where things get really interesting. In Act 2, Justin himself takes the stand.
Finally, I can't wait to hear his side of the story.
Me too. It's going to be revealing, to say the least.
So Act 2 really takes us deeper into Justin's mind.
Yeah, he finally takes the stand, and wow, his testimony is powerful.
What does he say?
He describes this feeling of being trapped by his ego.
Crap.
Like he's constantly seeking validation, approval, anything to feel good about himself.
I can see how that could be exhausting.
Totally. And he actually uses the word junkie.
A junkie.
Yeah, to describe his relationship with his ego.
Wow, that's a strong image.
It is. He's basically saying he's addicted to the feeling.
Addicted to feeling good about himself.
Yeah, or at least to feeling less bad.
Less bad, huh? So, like, it's a coping mechanism.
Exactly. He even shares stories from his childhood.
Oh, interesting. Like what?
He talks about being bullied as a kid
That's tough.
and constantly wanting his parents' approval.
Seeking validation from them.
Yeah, but he always felt inadequate.
Inadequate. Compared to who?
Well, his dad was super successful.
Okay, that makes sense.
And his mom, she was kind of emotionally distant.
So not a very supportive environment?
Not really. And, you know, if we look at this from a psychological perspective.
Yeah, from like a Freudian perspective.
Right, exactly. It makes you wonder if his need for validation
Right.
stems from those early experiences.
That makes a lot of sense. Like the ego develops as a defense mechanism, right?
To protect us from those feelings of insecurity.
Exactly. Because feeling inadequate is painful.
Totally. And maybe that's why Justin's ego is always pushing him to achieve more.
To prove his worth.
Yeah, and to get that external validation he never got as a kid.
It's like he's still trying to win over his parents.
Maybe so. But then the cross-examination starts.
Here comes the other side.
And the lawyer for the ego, he really flips the script.
What do you mean?
He argues that Justin's unhappiness isn't the ego's fault at all.
Whose fault is it then?
He says it's a result of his upbringing.
His upbringing.
Yeah. He even brings in excerpts from Justin's father's business book.
Business book, huh? What's in it?
Well, it's full of this, like, ruthless philosophy.
Ruthless.
Yeah, all about wealth and power and manipulation.
Oh, wow, that's intense.
Right. And it makes you wonder, maybe Justin's obsession with success
Right.
is just him following in his father's footsteps.
So it's like a learned behavior.
Exactly. It's that whole nature versus nurture debate.
Right. How much is our personality determined by our genes?
And how much is shaped by our environment.
Exactly. This play really makes you think about that.
It does. And just when you think you're starting to understand it all,
What happens?
they bring in an expert witness.
Oh, an expert.
Yeah,
Okay.
Dr. Gabby Prattle.
Dr. Gabby Prattle. Interesting name.
I know, right? She's the medical director of a psychiatric unit.
Okay, so she knows her stuff.
Definitely. And she gives this really clear definition of the ego.
Oh, that's helpful.
Yeah. She explains how it acts as a mediator between our desires and the external world.
So like a bridge between our inner and outer selves.
Exactly. And she talks about how, even though it's often seen as the bad guy,
Right.
the ego actually serves a really important function.
Oh,
It protects our sense of self, helps us make decisions.
so it's not all bad.
Not necessarily.
Yeah.
But she also points out that it can become a problem
A problem how?
when it's driven by insecurity and fear.
I see.
It can lead us to do unhealthy things
Yeah.
and prevent us from being our true selves.
Right, so it's all about balance.
Exactly. So we've got Justin's emotional testimony,
Mm-hmm.
the lawyer's argument about his upbringing,
Right.
and Dr. Prattle's expert analysis.
Lots to consider.
It is. And now it's up to the jury to decide Justin's fate and the fate of his ego.
The suspense is killing me. What happens in the closing arguments?
Okay, so closing arguments.
This is where it all comes together.
Right. Each side makes their final plea, tries to win over the jury.
Always a lot of drama in closing arguments.
Oh, for sure. So first up is Counselor Bunn representing Mr. Case.
All right, let's hear it.
And she gives this really powerful speech
About.
about how destructive the ego can be, how it prevents Justin from finding true happiness.
Interesting.
She even tells this story about a Holocaust survivor.
A Holocaust survivor.
Yeah, who vowed to never say anything that couldn't be her last words.
Wow, that's heavy.
It is, right?
Yeah.
And she uses it to show how our words and actions, often driven by ego, can have a lasting impact on others.
That's a good point. It makes you think about the consequences.
Right. Like how many times have we said or done something out of ego
Yeah.
and then regretted it later?
Way too many times, probably.
Exactly. But then Counselor Terry gets up.
The ego's lawyer.
Yep. And he takes a completely different approach.
What does he do?
He actually portrays the ego as a protector.
The protector.
Yeah, like a shield against pain and fear.
That's an interesting way to look at it.
Right. He even compares the ego to Martin Luther King Jr.
Martin Luther King Jr., how does that even work?
Well, he talks about the fight for civil rights
Okay.
and how sometimes you need that strong sense of self
Right.
to stand up for what you believe in.
Ah, so the ego can be a force for good.
Exactly. And he asks the jury to imagine what would happen if they removed Justin's ego.
Good question.
Would they be willing to lose that part of themselves?
The part that gives them confidence, ambition.
Exactly. So both sides have made really strong arguments.
I bet the jury is having a tough time deciding.
Oh, I'm sure they are. And then finally, the moment we've all been waiting for.
The verdict.
Maybe the real trial isn't in a courtroom.
Right.
It's something we all go through internally.
Our own battles with our egos.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And we might not be able to get rid of them completely.
We can learn to understand them.
Right. To manage them, to find some kind of balance.
Yeah. It's an ongoing process, for sure.
It is. This play really makes you think.
It does.
But that's what makes it so good, right?
Totally. It challenges us to look inward.
And to question our own relationships with our egos.
Because we all have them.
Exactly. And maybe, just maybe, by understanding them better.
We can live more authentic lives.
Well said. So there you have it, our deep dive into ego.
Thanks for taking us through it. That was fascinating.
Yeah, it was a good one. And until next time, keep questioning, keep exploring.
And keep those egos in check.
You got it.